We're joined briefly by Jay DeLancy of the Voter Integrity Project, an individual I was speaking to Monday morning, as a matter of fact, in advance of the federal appeals court hearing that's underway in Winston-Salem related to North Carolina's voter law. Now, I have got to say at the outset that the headlines have been saying voter ID law. Well, in fact, voter ID is not part of the debate or discussion in Winston-Salem, as I understand. And so with that, let's go to Jay DeLancy, who's joining us briefly this afternoon in a pre-recorded segment here about what took place yesterday and what he's hearing so far today. And with that, Jay, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us, sir.
Good afternoon, Lockwood. First off, I realize now that I really like it when they call it voter ID, even though that's a bad name, because the rotund reverend would like us to call it voter suppression.
Well,
and,
but
no one.
But it has nothing to. Well, wait a second. He's complaining about the fact, and so did others. I read in the paper today that some of the new laws that have been established and new regulations theoretically are suppressing voter involvement. But it's interesting. And this has been one of the arguments, and we won't go into the details here, but rather just what's the flavor and environment there in Winston-Salem. But one thing that was noted was the state's argument that there is no effort to identify any particular voters, that all voters are treated the same. And so it seems to me, arguably, it's not voter suppression unless you want to talk about the entire voting population of North Carolina. And apparently, many voters, myself being one of them, are actually interested and in favor of some of the new laws. But let's go to this related to the effort on the part of the opposition, if you will, to paint this with every racial and, as a matter of fact, the word, I think, poll tax came up in a conversation yesterday between the state and I guess, Reverend Barber of the NAACP. So,
yeah.
I guess really the question I'm asking for you today from you, Jay, is what was the flavor in the opening session of the hearing yesterday?
Well, it was very weak on the other side. If you ever saw any of these district attorney remarks on, like, the Trayvon Martin trial or the Ferguson trial, any of those trials that have happened, the district attorney would get up and read newspaper clippings and treat them as fact.
Okay.
And then the other side would hit you with the law, and we're going to win this on the law. If the law still matters, the state of North Carolina, it will be a slam dunk for the state of North Carolina if the law even matters.
Well, okay, so, said from a perspective of an individual who's not a lawyer, by the way, but who was there watching. All right, there was
it's easy. Here's how I know it. Their star witness they brought up was the beginning of just a terrible day for them, where they get this pathetic lady who's a hardworking woman with all kinds of issues that in the end she didn't get to vote. And then the state goes up and asks a handful of questions and slices her and dices her because it was clear that, A, she didn't vote because she made several bad choices, a whole bunch of bad choices along the way, including not registering a vote from her own address for 3 years. And yet she expected, then she wanted to have the privilege of driving across town and voting at her parents' house. And the lady's a 40-something-year-old adult who's got adult children even. And it's like, so you registered at your mama's house. And she said, one of the key questions, they said, well, and how long have you, she says, I do that because I move around a lot. I can't afford good housing and I have to move around. Really play on that poor thing. And then she, they said, how long have you lived at your current house? She said, 3 years. And we Googled her house. We Googled her address. It's a nice house with a Lexus parked out in front. In fact, when the Google Earth came by and took their shot, or Google Street View. So the point is, that was their best witness. And all of them, there were about 3 or 4, maybe 5 witnesses like that all day. And they were just embarrassing because in every single case, the left, or the plaintiff rather, had made this case like, oh, look, and this dastardly law is the reason this happened. And then the state would get up and just ask a few questions and cut to it. Oh, no, this one happened because this person couldn't get a ride. One lady couldn't get a ride, said she was too old, elderly, and too feeble and all that. She walked to the nearest precinct, and it was the wrong one. And she just didn't have the energy to go to the other one. And they get up and ask her, do you go to church? Yeah. Well, how do you get there? So-and-so carries me. Oh, that church. Did you know that church had a voter drive where they were hauling people to the polls to vote? Did you know about that? No, I didn't know that.
All right. So in essence, their arguments were weak. All right. Those were the witnesses. Yeah. I want to go to the opening of the program yesterday. We were chatting early yesterday morning, and you were there in advance in Winston-Salem. By the way, where's the courthouse located? Is it in downtown Winston-Salem?
Yeah, it's 251 Main Street, North Main.
Is this a federal?
Nice area. We need.
Is this
a federal building?
Federal building.
Courthouse.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
You can't bring cameras. You can't bring phones, but we need people to go there.
Hey, here's a question. Wait.
Yeah.
Here's a question. Something that's alluding to the overriding and overarching argument related to the new voter laws. Do you need an ID to go into the courtroom?
Funny you should ask. Yep, you do.
Okay. All right.
And they make that quite clear.
Okay.
It has to be a state-issued ID.
Okay. Let's just leave it there. I just want to make note of that because this isn't over an issue related to voter regulations and voter ID. All right. There was supposed to be Jay. Stop laughing. The audience is the audience. I know the audience is allowed to continue to laugh. The question for you, Jay, is yesterday there was anticipation of a march/rally. Did that in fact take place? You were there in advance in hopes of being able to get a seat in the courtroom. What was the status of the events there in Winston-Salem?
I was first in line, by the way, in the courtroom, and it's still, I had so many lawyers and media break in front of me that I could not get in until after the proceedings had started. I was one of the last 9 people to get to the courtroom, so it was jammed full of lawyers. But anyway, in the morning, things were very calm. There was a long line, and a whole lot of people never got in. That afternoon, it was a zoo of epic proportions. I got to doff my cap to the SEIU, the Unitarian Universalist Church, the gay and lesbian groups all over the state, and the hardcore left wing. I mean, we're talking. If we don't like it, we'll burn it down. If we don't like it, tear it down. All those people were there. It was really hard left.
Okay, now you said you identified some groups there that intrigued me, related to gay and lesbian organizations. Were they carrying placards identifying themselves as gay and lesbian just out of curiosity, or are you being...
Yeah,
really?
No, it was. It was. I've got videotape of it. We're going to figure out what to do with it. It was phenomenal.
Okay,
and it was a huge crowd. It was a great coalition. The left did a great job.
Okay, I just want to. I'm going to go ahead and embarrass you here on on radio in front of everyone. We would like to get a copy of that to post on our Facebook page as well. Jay DeLancy.
It's a long video.
Well, we can edit it.
Okay.
Jay DeLancy of the Voter Integrity Project, our guest this afternoon. Just briefly, Jay, the events for the day, what's taking place? The federal judge is giving quite some time to each of the sides to make their presentations. Is it a little less chaotic and fewer people in attendance today, and might it just begin to, sort of thin out as the procedure continues?
Yes, it's trickling down.
Okay.
As far as attendance go, but it won't. Still, there's a hefty number that are still there today, but
okay.
People got in time at least. And then the big issue. Do you have time? I can give you some of the big issues.
All right, let's hear the big issue.
I had to leave after lunch, but okay. The big deal was that their first expert witness, and my father used to call an expert an X is a has-been, and a spurt is a drip under pressure.
Okay.
This guy was an academic, and he was an expert on Southern history, and he was reading he was preaching his expertise that he's gleaned from various newspaper clippings, like a good scholar would from the West Coast, and he was telling us all about the intent of the legislature based on our history. And it pretty much, during cross-examination, it was pretty much, okay, you really haven't talked to any legislators, have you? No. Okay, the only thing you know about them is the little clips, the little excerpts and clips you see from them in the paper, isn't it? Yeah. And so really, you're basing your research on the interpretation of a journalist of what someone said. So that's not only hearsay, but it's hearsay of hearsay. Would you agree? And the guy It was totally a waste of time this morning. And
Wow.
This is the way they got nothing. All they're trying to do is throw spaghetti against the wall and see if anything sticks. And it's tragic. Their only hope is in those parades and that the zoos they have outside.
All right.
So,
going back to the parades with you and the events that are taking place outside the court, is it having any significant impact based on your conversations with people who are standing by or observers in the courtroom? Is it having any effect, or is it just window dressing, for want of a better description, Jay?
Well, it's certainly window dressing locally, but the left is getting their footage. This is what concerns me, and people on my side don't get this. And I'm saying, guys, they are winning the propaganda battle. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as we learned in Trayvon Martin, we learned of that L.A. riots back. Maybe you're old enough to remember that. Right. I know you're a young guy, Lockwood. Yep. But we want legally the law worked like it was supposed to, but in the court of public opinion, that didn't matter. They still burned it down, and that's what concerns me now, is that they're building a narrative so they can just use it to talk about vote suppression, and the facts don't matter. And so this is where we have to be active and pushing back in the media. People calling these newspapers, writing letters, staying active on the comment page. Do not let them win this argument, calling this a trial about vote suppression.
Suppression, and of course, it was mentioned several times, even reading in the papers, that the comments efforts on the part of the plaintiffs to harken back to everything from Jim Crow to the South being renowned for voter suppression, and as I mentioned a moment ago, the whole concept of poll taxes. All right, Jay DeLancy, our guest this afternoon, and thank you for taking the time to be with us. And Jay, I'll be chatting with you. Are you going to be following this over the course of the next 3 weeks? 2 to 3 weeks is when it's the length of time for just the hearing itself.
Well, I have some personal logistics that are going to stop me from being there tomorrow morning, but we're trying to work on. Okay. I've got someone working in my organization who has he's covering, and he's a law student, and he understands. So we're going to have eyes and ears on target. We'll have people in the area. We'll
continue to follow this. It's an important story that does not affect just Winston-Salem or just Piedmont, North Carolina, but does in fact affect all of North Carolina. Jay DeLancy, our guest this afternoon here on Viewpoints. Of course, he with the Voter Integrity Project, voterintegrityproject.com. Jay, thanks for your time. I do appreciate it.
Thank you, Lockwood.
Viewpoints on the talk station FM 107 AM 1240.